set it up so we can see the questions, the answers that the people make. Go ahead, John.
Okay. Yeah, we had some technical difficulty, so we decided to go from my phone. Google Pixel 4, it's the best. We're going to continue with where we left. We're going to give everybody a couple of minutes to come back on. Yes, Victoria, yes, we are the best. We're back up. Okay, people are coming back on. That's great. Oh yeah, well, they're coming back on. Hello, Nicole. Hello, Estelle. This is much better. Thank you. You're welcome.
Nothing sucks.
Okay, so we're gonna get back. We've only answered 2 questions so far. So we were on question number 3. For staff who are working remotely, will this have an impact on our salary or assignments?
No.
Oh, okay, so that was a quick no. The question was, for staff who are working remotely, will this have an impact on our salary or assignment? The answer was no.
No, because one of the realities that one of the things that has happened with regards to COVID and the realities of virtual learning is that, you know, if we're in fact making sure that the standards are set and that they're high with high expectations, then obviously we're ultimately meeting the objectives. We are being allowed to do this obviously because of the pandemic, but there are some important lessons that we're learning during this process that hopefully when this pandemic is behind us, we'll obviously utilize to school us in the work that we're doing.
How and when will the educators that will be selected for remote instruction, and if they're selected, when will they be informed of their work status?
Great. So August 14th is the deadline that we have set up for everyone to reply to a survey question. You should have received a link from the principals about a week ago. So you have only a couple more days to completely fill it out. That'll help us assess where we are, and then begin communication starting over the weekend. No later than Monday, you should find out what your actual final status actually is.
John, the Superintendent, people are asking, can you redo the first 2 questions? They didn't hear them.
We'll do that at the end, if that's all right.
Yeah, we'll repeat the first 2 questions at the end.
Or do you want to do those now?
No, we're good. Will staff in school be expected to teach students at home too? How will that work, both practically? What would a hybrid model look like?
Yeah, so we actually modeled this during the course of the summer. It was something that I was thinking about for the last couple of months that school was in session, how to actually provide instruction equally for a student in class as well as a student that was at home. So we will obviously try to make sure that we're adhering to everything else that is required of us with class size, things of that nature. But ultimately at the end, the hybrid model is teaching whether you're virtually or in person at the school to students that are either in person at the school or that they are also virtually. So there's a teacher that could be at their house teaching students that are in person as well as at their houses, as well as a teacher who's in person teaching to the students who are not only in person but at their houses. So we modeled it for the first time during the course of the summer. We thought that it was highly successful. I think you may have featured or are going to be featuring some of the teachers that provided it. We put it to teachers and they were able to do it. We were quite successful this summer. We were able to do it for 3 weeks during the 5-week summer session.
How will class switching work in the middle school and high schools? Will teachers have to shuffle all belongings to and from each class, or will the students be moving?
Yeah, so this is going to be a tricky one. So depending on your particular location, more likely than not, what our big strategy is going to be not to have as much movement as possible. So you may have seen in the news either recently that a lot of students in the hallways. That is not what we're going to do, and that is not going to work for us. So ultimately, it's going to be reducing the amount of movement in particular schools. Definitely not having a teacher move like with a cart from one class to another. There may be some versions of some of that, but ultimately we want to reduce the movement as much as possible.
How will lunch and preps work for staff?
Oh my goodness. So if anything is going to require of you a lot of patience with us, so we've learned flexibility during the course of the last 5 months. This is going to be about teaching everyone to be patient. So depending on the school and the schedule that we have, we're going to need your assistance on some of those areas, probably unlike ever before. Some of you have probably assisted us already or assisted your schools accordingly. So we're going to manage through it. It's going to be tricky. I think on September 1, when we do the district staff convocation, I'll provide some broad guidance that has been shared with the principals, and then on that afternoon, September 1, and the 2nd and the 3rd, it'll become a little bit clearer for everyone the extent to which, when are your preps, things of that nature.
To attendance and evaluation. We don't want to end up in a situation where staff feels they have to come to school even if they are sick to avoid getting penalized for their attendance. Will the district be providing flexibility on attendance policies for staff?
Yeah, so I know that, let's say COVID-19 didn't exist and you weren't feeling well. I know for a fact that probably everyone who's a teacher watching right now, and those who aren't, including the superintendent when he was a teacher in the district, that we came to school and we weren't feeling well. Like the one thing that people don't necessarily like to come to the conclusion is that we actually have people who care about their work, sometimes more so than themselves. This is not one of those times. As a reality of COVID-19, I actually need you to worry about you a little bit more. And so not being healthy is not a good thing. So we're going to make sure that we have programs, in particular, as I'm watching myself on Facebook Live, to work on exercise and kind of self-help. So self-care will become extremely important. But if you're not feeling well, I'm going to need you to really not take that drive. Now, we don't want to create a situation, if you're in person, that you're always thinking that you can do that, because obviously there are children that are in person, that may in fact be in person, that are really going to need you to be there. So the difference, if you're able to still work on a day that you're not feeling well, we may, and your principals will discuss this with you, have you remain virtual on that day. The catch is going to be then who's covering your class, and I know that there's a question about substitute teachers, so I'm going to hopefully answer that there. So as it relates to attendance, we're going to just monitor that very carefully, keeping everyone honest with regards to whatever are the realities that pertain to you. This is a situation where something may pertain to one person and not somebody else.
If a teacher has to quarantine for COVID, what will coverage for their in-person / remote students look like?
Yeah, so right now we know that if you're if you're virtual, then that's kind of self-explanatory. If you're able to sign on, then you will be able to do that virtually. If you're in person, that's going to be really, really tricky on us. So making sure that you're following what you normally do. Usually teachers who aren't feeling well give as much of a heads up to your principal or the clerk at the school so they can arrange for sub. There isn't going to be that reality of kind of calling in subs at random. So we're going to need you to be healthy. We're going to need you to come to work, those of you who are going to be able to do that, and we're going to need you to be mindful of the fact that if you're sick, that you need to stay at home. And then the principals are right now, they returned on August 3rd, they're in the process of creating a pool of substitute teachers that will be working in the school, but the type of work that a substitute teacher will be a little different than what we're used to.
If I test positive for COVID and need to go to the hospital, do I have to use my sick days?
So
what if I run out?
Yeah, so there are many factors that result in when we cover and when we don't. So it's going to all be based on whatever are the conditions of the realities that are there and the type of day that you actually take. In some instances, I would want everyone to remember that a global pandemic still exists and there are guidelines that are helping us in making these types of decisions. So there are answers. Some of the answers would be in the favor of the employee and some would not. And it's all going to be based on what the particular scenario actually is.
What will after-school and co-curricular activities look like this year?
So as a result of the CARES Act, we were able to fund dollars in 3 distinct categories. Personal protective equipment, which deals with a number of factors like what's going to be on students' desks, what kind of protective gear are the folks that will be helping in the ingress procedures, what will they wear, things of that nature. So first is on personal protective equipment, second is on the technology aspect of the work, and then the third is extremely important, and that is on how we're going to address before school, after school tutorials, as well as work on the weekend. So we have are focused on extending the day. See, our objective is, if we're going to do in-person, is provide as much time for in-person instruction as possible, and that also includes to address the needs of students though who are virtual. So we will have programming for our students beyond the school day like we normally do, but the intensity of it is going to obviously be somewhat different. To spend every minute of extended time focused on making sure that we're meeting the needs of our students.
What is the student-teacher ratio?
But then the other part of that dealt with like co-curricular activities, things of that nature. Whatever has an end product will still be the required end product. For example, I'm expecting to see yearbooks in every single school. There are some schools that have created newspapers. So whatever it is that the school has budgeted for, prior to starting, you need to make sure that it's been approved for you to actually do. And if it has, whatever is the end product, you need to actually complete it. We know that as it relates to sports, there are certain conditions with regards to that. So we're not in the same situation as we were last year, where people are like, well, did I get paid? Did I not get paid? Will we have these type of activities and the sorts? So we've kind of created a memorandum of understanding that will hopefully answer all of those questions and moving forward. We're going to be good.
What is the student-teacher ratio in pre-K, and how will we be enforcing social distancing for special ed and pre-K?
Yeah, so we know that we're following some guidance from the early childhood department from the state on the answer of what ratios are there. So you would, if you're a teacher, then that guidance will be shared with the principals, and that will obviously be shared with you. We know that there are all students that have an interaction. Teaching is about the interaction between the adult and the child, so that the students' needs are best addressed. So we know that in the areas of students that are the youngest and the students that need us the most, that interaction is close. So it's extremely important that anyone who is within 6 feet of the proximity that we're saying is the rule, that employee is just wearing the type of protective gear that we have purchased for them. So we know that in those instances, we're seeing those individuals working with gloves, not only having a face mask, but having a shield as well. And anyone who's in that situation, the district has purchased those items for them.
Will personal per diem aides be called back into work in September?
Well, that's an interesting question, because some of you may be aware that in other school districts, a lot of the per diems were not part of the strategy of helping children continue to do the great work that they were doing prior to COVID-19. That's not our reality in Newark, and I don't forecast that being a problem come this September. So those of you who are working with a particular child best know how to address those needs, and for the most part, those people should hear back from their principals just to make sure in case there are any changes, but for the most part, the per diem staff will be helping us in September.
Many buildings are hot, windows are old or don't open, and no ventilation. What is being done to improve ventilation?
Oh my goodness, some of you may be aware, but we have a school building, Lafayette Street School, that had students in it 10 years before Abe Lincoln became President of the United States. Okay? 10 years before Abraham Lincoln was the President of the United States, we had students there. So this is a very, very serious problem that we know what schools we're talking about, and to the extent possible, we're monitoring them, whether it's filter system, even in the schools that have AC, we're just monitoring very, very aggressively. And the new normal is that while we're asking everyone to be flexible, we're also asking people to be very, very patient. And I just want people to know that one of our protocols is that we actually close a school building that we may have said school was in fact in session at. So usually any closing of a school will be at minimum a 48-hour event, but we'll make sure that we're keeping tabs of all of you at your particular schools, because an event at a school is not necessarily an event at the district. For example, when it's a snow day, it's snow day for everybody. Of where we are today with COVID-19 is we may say that there's no school on a particular day at a particular school. That's all part of our actual protocol. So as it relates to facilities and their needs, we know that this differs school by school, and our strategy at each of our schools is just a little different.
Who do we contact if safety measures are not being taken in the building?
Well, I think it's really, really important for everyone to understand that one of the things that I don't like is, and I understand it, but I don't like when people are like anonymous this, anonymous that. And I understand why people do that, because then sometimes when you are honest, people don't want you to be honest, and then they're like not happy with you after that. No, trust me, there are people who are on this Facebook Live that tilt it up because it looks like my head is smaller than my body. All right, thank you very much. There are people that are on this call who are always trying to keep us honest. I don't want to say people by name, but they're always like, and it's unfortunate because, people don't like to hear the truth, and so that's not me. So I do want people to keep us honest. I think that it's extremely important for us to be called out on certain things. Sometimes it's not necessarily what you're calling us on, but the time period in which it's occurring. As it relates right now, there are more than teachers that are on this call, but what's extremely important is that obviously you have a principal that needs to make sure that things are occurring the way that they need to. There's an assistant superintendent, and I think that's probably at the school level the right two people to be in contact with if in fact we've fallen short. Now I'm going to be the first one to say that we need certain things to be certainly on point, but we know that there may be things that are less perfect than others, and we know that may differ from one school to another. So ultimately we will always work to try to be better and not compromise on the things that we can.
Superintendent Leon, if a substitute doesn't work at least once a month, they will lose their license. I want to inquire, what will happen to substitute teachers in September?
Yeah, so I don't know how many superintendents of schools we've had who were substitute teachers, but I used to be a substitute teacher, so I know what you're talking about. I've been there, I've done that. And so ultimately, I would say whoever that person is, if you were a substitute teacher asking the question, or you're a substitute teacher on the call right now, I'd reach out to the principal and say, hey, I'm available during the course of the year. We know that there aren't going to be one substitute per every person at one point in time absent, but the principals are going to need to have the assistance of substitute teachers. So if that's you, I would say reach out to the principal of the school that you're kind of associated with. When I was a substitute teacher, I was either always at Hawkins Street School or always at Science High School, because those were the two schools that I graduated from. So we know that some people do that. They're at the school where they attended, but more likely than not, I would reach out to the principal of the school to see that, let them know that you're available to help them.
You've mentioned that a lot of students might have 4 p.m. or Saturday class times. Please explain what that means and its impact on teachers.
Yeah, so ultimately, if we don't have any staff that's going to work this, that's going to take the program. So the idea is that the school day would be extended an hour, and that would be an hour of additional assistance. So it forms in a couple of different aspects. So one aspect of it could be just straight up tutoring, helping in the core content areas, whatever are the students' needs, making sure that we're addressing them. But it has to be congruent with what's occurring in the classroom. So more likely than not, it makes sense to me that that would be the teacher who's actually teaching that subject, but that's not always necessarily the case. We want the very, very best to help us during these additional times. So if that's you, the principals will kind of get some informal inquiry of you on the afternoon of September 1st so that you can let them know if you're going to be available. And that's going to look the same whether it's in person or virtually.
Okay, the Board of Ed and the Newark Teachers Union have a.
I just wanted to say, so after school isn't mandatory for everyone, and Saturday isn't mandatory for everyone. That's on staff. That may not be the same for principal both at Horton and at University High School. I require programming for certain students as it related to tutoring needs, and then I required Saturday school for all of the students regardless of what your needs. So that could look different based on whatever is the strategy that exists at your school.
The Board of Ed and the Newark Teachers Union have an evaluation committee. What will evaluation look like? Will there be one for virtual and one for in-person, or will there be a hybrid evaluation?
So that's a great question. So in collaboration with the Newark Teachers Union, we have looked at the framework for effective teaching, and I think that we made some incredible, very, very intelligent modifications. Almost all of them, not all of them, but almost all of them were recommendations that were made by the committee from the Newark Teachers Union. We ultimately were in agreement with those recommended changes. You will learn about what they are as we get closer to the start of school. So the principals, vice principals, and department chairpersons, they're going to undergo a training in about 2 weeks. So I think it's next week that they will undergo the training. And on the day that that occurs, unless the Newark Teachers Union has already posted the official changes at that point in time, we'll make sure that the Newark Teachers Union has information with regards to posting it so that you can start seeing what the changes are yourself prior to the start of school.
Will swab test be the only option?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Thank you for asking it. The only tests that we are saying are acceptable at this time are the oral swab or the nasal swab. So I've taken the nasal swab test 3 times and it has been negative all 3 times. I also did the antibody test. I did that the first time that I did the nasal swab. And right now, the antibody test is not being utilized as something to kind of disclaim that someone is positive or not. So right now, we're only looking at the oral swab and the nasal swab.
Okay, the almost last question, because we're going to repeat the original 2. When are people with at-risk conditions or those who care for people with compromised immune systems going to be able to opt for virtual instruction?
Yes, so we have an August 14th deadline. That's this Friday. So everyone should have received a link from their principal by now that asks some very simple questions. The first question, if you answer yes, you're good, and that is that you're, returning to in-person operations come this September. We look forward to seeing you. If you answer no, then there's a series of questions that will kind of help make that determination. We want everyone to know that returning to in-person is only going to be something that we do if in fact we're following all of the necessary protocols for a healthy and safe experience for everyone to return. We know that there will be some staff members that the best option for them is to continue virtual operations, and we know that there are some students that are going to join you in that experience. Okay. We're going to go to the first 2 questions?
Yes.
But before you do that, if I can, because I know that there were a couple people the other night when we had the meeting with the parents who made a couple of really important points that I just wanted to highlight for everyone. So I was a teacher in Newark as well, right? And so I know that everybody has a different type of experience with everyone else who works in your building. So if you're going to come back to in-person operations, I want you to know that kind of the sharing of classrooms is not something that's going to happen, and that the cleaning of classrooms is supposed to be unlike ever before. And I say is supposed to be unlike ever before. So if I were a teacher today and I would be in person, and I would make sure that I'm cleaning my room, making sure that it is ready for me. I know that there are really great people that we have working in the district, all in different, all positions throughout the whole entire school system. But if we're going to rely on anyone for my safety, I'm going to rely on me. So I'm just letting you know, making sure that you have all of the tools that you need will be something that we will help you do. But definitely making sure that your rooms are clean is something I do for my own self if I'm in a particular classroom. So there were 2 questions at the start. One of them had a long answer, so bear with me on them.
Superintendent, many districts are doing shortened hours or shortened weeks. Will Newark be doing full-time 5 days a week? If so, why?
Yep. So this is something that we're actually looking at very carefully. As of right now, we are understanding that any type of return to in-person instruction has to be to maximize the interaction between the students who are in person and the actual teacher in that classroom. So as of right now, we will be monitoring it very, very carefully, and we need everyone to respond to the actual survey, because that'll help us assess how direct the impact is going to be about everyone's return. If, based on everything that we know now, and instruction occurs, and we make a decision to change any of the hours of the day, there are some guidelines that we're being provided by the State Department. We know that the start of the day isn't necessarily going to be at the usual time while you will be in the school already, or even in some instances assisting, learning the protocols, and you may want to assist us. We're going to need help in the ingress procedures at each of the schools. But if, in fact, we make a change, whether we pilot it at a school or not, or we make an eventual change to the hours, whatever it is that we decide to do with regards to the hours of the day, we would do that in the entire district so that we're all moving in the same direction.
What will be school day hours for elementary, middle, and high?
Yeah, so we're going to adhere to the same hours as it currently exists, and then if, in fact, we make any changes to it, and we very well could, we will then circle back with all of the teachers at that appropriate time.
I asked the Iovino question, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, that was it. We want to thank you for your participation. We want to apologize for the glitch that we had earlier on. And, just from my opening comments, I just want to repeat, what our national president, Randy Weingarten, had said, that, we don't know what other districts have been doing since the shutdown, but within 2 weeks of the shutdown, we were already meeting virtually saying, how do we come back? We had no idea when or if we were going to come back, but we knew immediately within 2 weeks that we needed to start preparing for it. We're not Georgia. We're not some of these, we're not Israel. And I know that a lot of people are doing a lot of Googling, but let's start doing Googling on those districts and in those states and in those countries where it's been done successfully. What happened in Georgia would never happen here in Newark. We wouldn't allow it. So let's try Googling where it's been successful, because that's what we want to model. We have creative and resilient teachers in this district, great support staff, great child study teams. We need to be thinking outside the box within the CDC limitations of providing this small number of students, these 10 kids in your classroom. Oh, you know what? For another safety question before you go, you have a second?
You got it.
Before we went on air, you were speaking with the head of facilities. Could you give us an update on where we are in terms of the plexiglass for the classrooms and ventilator filters?
Yep. So right now, we know that by the time everyone returns in September, because teachers are expected to return on the 1st of September to the start of school. That gets interpreted differently. Like some people, does that mean I'm physically there? When I say school is open, does that mean I'm walking in the building? So it's all semantics to a certain extent, because it's going to be based on what your reality actually is. So next week we're getting a shipment of products into the schools for all of the students' desks. That's because of the shipment being so big. We know that that's going to arrive next week, and then the following week. So the week of the 17th and then the week of the 24th, during that week, shipments are expected to actually arrive in every single one of the schools. So your school may receive something next week, but definitely by the before the start of our school, we should have everything in place. And then in situations where we don't, we'll make sure that we're monitoring and adjusting accordingly. Remember a couple of things. Wear your mask. Make sure you're social distancing. Wash your hands for 20 seconds and do that more consistently. Make sure you take your COVID-19 test with negative results in hand at least 2 weeks prior to your start. So stay safe and know that what we saw with the children who were in person this summer at First Avenue and 13th Avenue schools was absolutely incredible. And then the virtual instruction that we provided for the over 4,000 students that were not in person was just magic. We know that teachers make the difference, and ultimately we can't wait for your return to make and impact lives. And I thank you so much for the incredible work you've done and the incredible work I know you will do.
Thank you, Superintendent Leon. Have you noticed we have almost 1,000 people watching this? We have 4 times that number of members. The NTU has emailed you a lot of information with which you can make a decision. But run this past your family, run this past your friends, call your school colleagues before you make a decision and you hit that button prior to this Friday, August 14th. Call your administrator. Whatever you do to assuage your fear, we respect fear. We get it. Trust me, we get it. But if it makes you comfortable, absolutely have those conversations. And as a last resort, if you need to call us, you can Facebook message us here. We're pretty much available on all type of social media. Enjoy the rest of your day. We're going to post this, so if someone wasn't able to get to it earlier, they'll be able to watch the rerun live on the page. Thank you.